Hey everyone, thanks for stopping in. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video. We're going to be doing the 10 things that I love about my Honda Civic hatchback. So let's just get into it real quick. Here's number one. So number one, it starts off with the paint. So we painted this car. This was actually our first car that we painted. It is probably the best. So there is imperfections in it or whatever, but it's very clear. It was wet sanded, and I think that it looks pretty good. Comparing the paint with the glass, it's pretty similar. It's much better than some of the other cars we've done. Like, let's see, kind of got the Nova over here. This car has like dry spots and orange peel. This car is one that's like never been wet sanded or anything, whereas this one was. So this one, in my opinion, just come out a lot better. I think we have an overall better result. It's just kind of like that extra 10% that you've got to do to make the car really good, you know? So definitely the paint, I really am happy with the paint. We've painted other cars of mine, basically all my cars. But this one was the one that definitely come out the best. Okay, so for number two, we are going to be talking about the Air Ride. So this car is on 3H, Airlift 3H. So it has height sensors on every corner. And with this car being very light, in the rear end specifically, just 3 or 5 PSI makes a huge difference in the height. With having height sensors, even if I put weight back there or take weight out, it'll always hit the same preset because it's height-based rather than pressure-based. So pressure-based systems tend to work better in heavier cars just because you don't have such a fluctuation in weight being added or taken out with pressure versus a lighter car. So this car also has adjustable dampening, and the adjustable dampening on this car was the first car I ever did adjustable dampening on, and it makes a very big difference. The ride quality of the car is much, much better. And then again, being in a vehicle that's lighter weight, that pressure, the higher you go up, the stiffer the car rides. And that isn't a good thing because you have to make sure that the car rides good at the height that you want to drive the car at. So with this car, we run like 100 or like 95 PSI in front to get at a good ride height, and the rear usually runs between like 50 and 60. But being that it's lighter, you kind of feel the weight more up front of it being stiffer, but you can adjust the rebound with the dampening. Definitely the Air Ride is like one of my favorite things about this car, so that comes in at number two. So let's get into number three. So for number three, we have my turbo D16 Z6. This is, again, it's up there right along with the Air Ride. That's why we're at number three. This single cam, the D16 Z6 is arguably the best in terms of oil flow. It's just the best basically single cam that you can build upon for a boosted application. This single cam factory revs out to like 7,200, and that stock cam, I believe if you just do springs and retainers, you can rev this thing out to like 8 grand or even more. So it's just super nice platform to build upon. With pistons and rods, I don't see this thing having any issue making 350 or more wheel horsepower. Just stay on these small tires with this transmission, and it shouldn't have an issue really with axles or anything else. It would be a crazy good street car, and I definitely love the turbo single cam. So that's number three. Let's check out number four, with number three being the single cam. So with number three being in the engine bay, number four is actually the interior. So I really do enjoy this car because the interior, to me, is very minimalistic. It fits the time period of the car very well. And it's just one of my favorite things about this car When I initially started searching and learning about these cars, I liked the exterior just because the headlights and the front end, the way that looked. And then what caught me next was the interior. So first things first, right when you get into the interior, very simple. I wanted a base model car or a low tier car. So everything was mechanical. I like the dash, it's very clean. The rear seats, all that is very simple. So the interior is definitely up there on one of my favorite things. One of my long-term goals with the interior of this car is the surround piece that goes around the steering wheel for the HVAC, the radio control, the rear defrost, stuff like that. I actually want to shave that panel, make it completely flat, and I'd like to put gauges on the top and put switches on the bottom. I do want to keep the door panels, the dash, the center console, and probably do like a half carpet, and the rest of the car will be gutted. I'd like to shave that and then paint it. Although the interior is one of my favorite things in stock form, this one has been driven a lot, so it had a lot of wear. The seats that came in it were out of two different cars, so those sucked. It's just better to make it more like race car now, to me, with where I kind of want this car to go. To try and like save the interior. So that's it for number 4. Moving on to number 5 now. We're going to be talking about my wheels, tires, and my center caps. These wheels are NK92s. They are a BBS RS style wheel, but a one-piece design, and they don't have the covers that go over your lug nuts like you'd find on a BBS RS. I really like how the one-piece design looks, and I really enjoy the deep lip that you find on these 8-inch wide wheels with the offset that these are. I can't remember the exact offset of these off the top of my head, but I do know that they make a 7-inch version width-wise, and it is nowhere near as deep. So moving on to the center caps, I don't have a stock one to show you, but I can put a picture on the screen now of what these wheels look like with stock center caps. And I like the way that this looks much better. As you can see, there's kind of a lip built into the wheel. So what we decided to do was make a cap that fit on this very snug, but complemented the bend in the wheel. And then we polished the front of it. It's just very flat. It makes the wheel look really simple. And I do enjoy it because to me, it makes the wheel seem like it has more depth versus the stock cap that sticks way out. You know, it probably sticks out 1.5 inches beyond the face of the wheel. And I find that it makes the wheel not look as deep. So here we are, moving on to the next one. And it's a really simple one. You guys have seen the car and we've talked about it quite a bit, but it's basically completely shaved. There's only one more thing that I would like to shave on the car. So we don't have door handles, we don't have the side trim, we don't have any holes for emblems, we don't have keyholes in the trunk. The only other thing I could see myself wanting to shave is this gas door. So if this car ever got a fuel cell, which I'm not totally opposed to, I would like to shave this gas door so that it looks like the other quarter panel. But as you can see, we don't have the door handles, we don't have the side trim, or the emblem holes, or front bumper holes for the plate. And something else that we never did that I would want to do is the windshield squirters. But I love that this car is shaved, as well as the engine bay. So we'll kind of go through that here right now. So here we are with the engine bay again. It's very hard to tell because it's so dirty in here. But this engine bay is completely shaved. It's all brake tucked. There's no proportioning valve there anymore. No studs or empty holes that aren't being used. There's some here and there, but those are open for reasons. The frame rails are shaved. All around that. The strut towers are shaved. This front piece here, no useless holes for the AC stuff anymore. Again, very dirty. but I shaved this engine bay when I was like 17 or 18. And although I do think it's time for a refresh and to go through the engine harness again, just because I've learned so much about wiring, I would definitely like to just touch everything up again, strip the car down, and basically do it over again, just because I think this is one of those cars that will probably stay with me forever. I do love the whole shaved exterior, the handles. I love the engine bay, just everything being shaved and getting rid of everything that's unnecessary. It just makes the car really simple, which is how I view this car in stock form anyways. So let's move on to the next thing. So number 7 is not based around anything with how the car looks, which is usually things that I tend to talk about because I'm so focused on cosmetics. This one is how it handles and how it drives. So this car in stock form, when I painted it, I had it on coilovers. I used to like driving it, spiritedly on like curvy back roads and stuff. And when this car was on coilovers and had this Z6 in it, but not turboed, those were probably some of the best times I had with this car, just because you could drive the car so hard because it didn't make a ton of power, but it also had the suspension and the handling of a really good car and low center of gravity, alignment and stuff like that. It drove really well. So being able to have a car that drove extremely well, that you could basically drive 10/10ths without getting into serious trouble, was, like I said, some of the best times I ever had driving this car. So although it is on air ride now, believe it or not, it does still handle very well. There is some things I would like to do, because with the height that I drive it at, which is it's like what the front is currently at, the back is a little more raised than I would drive it on the street. But with it at this height, what tends to happen is I drive it at too low of an airbag pressure. So the car becomes kind of floaty, which you don't typically want when driving over bumps quickly, just because what could happen is the shock or the bag could jump around and not keep the tire planted on the ground as well as you would want. So if I had to change anything, I would want to modify the suspension so I could have different height presets for keeping the car low but running higher pressure. Just because that higher pressure will, if I hit a bump, it'll bump once and that'll be it. Whereas, I'm kind of exaggerating it, but whereas like something where you're running lower bag pressure, if you hit that bump, what will happen is your car will tend to like keep doing what it was doing. It's like if you had a car but you took the shocks out of it, but you just had springs. Like the thing, if it hit a little bump, it would just keep jumping up and down. That's kind of what this does. You could also adjust the dampening to help counteract that some, but it's kind of like you gotta find a happy medium. And I feel like if I just had it set up so that the car didn't go as high, but it had more pressure, it would probably make for a much better spirited driving car. Whereas the setup that it's currently on, being it has a low bag pressure, it would just be very comfortable to drive. So moving on to number 8, and this is again about appearance stuff. So this car, when it got restored, we did all new trim and we painted everything just to match and make everything look good. So I really enjoy that we kind of didn't just paint the car and then put everything else back on it. We did new headlights and turn signals, and we put new mirrors on it and the spoiler and just the new trim, like I said before, because it just brings that car to the next level versus just painting it and then it looking good as it passes by or when you're 20 feet away from it. Whereas now, if you're really up close with this car, it's like that next level because all the trim is restored. So this door trim right here is really famous for going bad. In stock form, when I got this car, basically all of the material was gone and it was just metal showing. We also did the B-pillar trim. I bought that new and then painted it to match. which as you can see matches the mirrors. And then we refinished the side skirts, headlights, and turn signals. Brand new front lip, and painted these pieces here on the back window for where a wiper would go, and new taillights. Now for number 9, it's something that I can kind of show, but it's something more we can talk about. But something that I didn't like was that this car had drum brakes in the rear. And me growing up, I never had drum brake cars, and everything that was around me that had drum brakes, it seemed like we were getting rid of those and putting, disc brakes on it. So I was able to find a part out on eBay, and I was able to buy rear trailing arms that were set up for disc brake. Now that we have the disc brakes, it makes changing and doing brake jobs super easy. So we'll see if we can get a little close up here. As you can see, kind of, there's drilled and slotted rotors back there, along with new calipers. And then we also did the same thing up front, which, we just did pads and rotors. So if I ever need to do a brake job on this car, I feel that the SI and EX model cars are going to be the ones that are most supplied for. Like the S4 RX-7 here comes with smaller disc non-vented brakes in the rear, and you can't buy those rotors anywhere. So when your rotor goes bad or you need pads, you're kind of SOL and can't really do anything about it. Whereas this car, with disc brakes all around it, I feel like it's going to be way easier to buy brakes for this car many years down the road, because they're still going to be making disc brakes for them, just because that's what most of them came with. And here we are at the final stretch, which is thing 10. And it's basically kind of a summary of everything. I just really enjoy the car with where it's at. So I really like the blue on yellow contrast, and I also like the blue on the black, which is like your front lip, your side skirts, mirror, spoiler. But the blue on the yellow has been something I always really enjoyed. And I bought a second set of these turn signals so I could run them clear. And I never truly liked the clear turn signals. Although in the long run, I do envision myself changing the color from blue to probably white. I think that everything being the way it is currently, in terms of the wheels being silver, all the trim being black, and these turn signals being yellow, I can picture this car white, and it looks great. Thank you guys for stopping in for this video on the 10 things that I love about my EG hatch. This car is really incredible, and I'm super stoked to have it. And it's a really cool car. Next video, what we're going to be doing is working on the rear fitment / quarter panels of my Civic, because as we talked about in a previous video, there's a very big lip. So when you air the car out, you have to make sure that the wheel is tucked in there with a lot of negative camber, so that wheel, when it airs out, it doesn't hit the quarter panel. I want to basically grind that edge back and bring the camber out so it's not so negative anymore. I think it'll make the car look a lot better, especially while it's aired out. I'm just really excited to get that done, because that's something that I've wanted to do for a long time. Just a reminder, we post videos here every 3 days. So when you guys see this video, it'll be 3 more days until you get a next video. But I do post YouTube shorts every single day. The time changes on when those get posted, but it's usually between 5 and 7 p.m. And they're usually related to the content that I'm doing or related to my cars in some way. So I do recommend checking those out. They're just really short, they're usually 15 or 20 seconds, but they're cool to check out in the meantime, just to kind of give you something to keep watching between those videos that get posted every 3 days. So thanks for checking in. I appreciate you guys hanging out and watching the content on the Civic. We'll be getting back to the RX-7 soon. So thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.